how to determine whether or not you have effective consequences for your autistic child's problem behavior. My name is Carrie Sousa Woodward. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, and I've been working with autistic kids and their families for over 22 years now. In the course of my work with parents, obviously one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is how to address problematic behavior when it happens. What do we do when our child engages in self-injury and aggression toward others? And often there is this giant misconception from parents that what they're doing is effective in addressing their child's behavior. And this is why. When their child is engaging in the behavior, a parent tells me they may tell the child to stop, or they walk over and they redirect the child to something else, and that the child stops engaging in the behavior then, and therefore their strategy is effective. But what they fail to understand is effectively addressing behavior is really talking about what's happening to that behavior over the long term. Is the child still engaging in the same level of that behavior every single day? Let's say your child engages in aggressive behavior 5 times a day, and every time that they engage in that behavior, you walk over and you redirect the child to do something else, thereby terminating that episode of aggressive behavior because they've been moved away from the child that they were hitting. But they do it 5 times a day, every day, which means that we really are being ineffective with our consequences because that consequence has no impact on how often your child's engaging in this behavior to begin with. If you weren't there to interrupt the behavior, it would probably continue happening for longer periods of time. So today we're going to talk about what defines an effective consequence and how can you go about determining what consequence is going to be effective for your child's problem behavior. It is my opinion that there is no such thing as bad behavior. Behavior happens because it is serving a purpose for the individual. There's a purpose behind that problem behavior. Now, a behavior may happen too often, or it may happen in the wrong settings. Or it may just straight up be an unhealthy behavior for a child, like trying to eat things that are unedible. Once we've identified a behavior that is problematic for a child, the first thing we need to do is really look at the behavior and determine what purpose is that behavior serving for your child. What's the function? What is your child accomplishing through this behavior? This is really at the heart of addressing behavior in an effective way. We can't just try to get rid of behavior without really understanding what purpose that behavior is serving for your child. Old ABA strategies would look at a behavior, would decide that it was not serving that child, it was problematic, and then they would maybe punish the behavior and get the behavior to go away. But unless we really address the underlying purpose of the behavior, you're always going to see different behaviors popping up to try to serve that same purpose. So the first thing we do is identify, why is my child engaging in this behavior? One way that you can do this at home is to start just jotting down the instances when the behavior occurs. Write a little bit about what's happening right before the behavior happened, and then write a little bit about what's happened after the behavior happened. So if we're talking about a child who's engaging in aggressive behavior toward their younger sister, maybe you'd say, sister grabbed toy out of his hand. He hit her. I walked over and redirected him to do something else. The next time it happens, you write down the same thing. He asked for cookies and I said no. He hit. I redirected him to do something else. When you can write down enough examples of the instance of the behavior, you can begin to see a pattern emerge. In just the 2 examples that I listed, there are 2 things that are consistent. One is that what happened right before the behavior was somehow tied to a tangible item. There was a desire for an item, or there was a desire to continue playing with a toy or to have a cookie. There was a desire there to obtain some sort of tangible item. And he was denied that either through having it being taken away or being told no. And the consequence was the same. We provided attention and removed him and redirected him somewhere else. So this begins to give us an idea of the communication skills that we might be able to teach our child as a replacement for hitting. It also looks at what skill deficit is there that is contributing to the hitting behavior. Obviously, with just 2 examples, it could be pretty difficult, but sticking with this just for the sake of explaining an argument, we could teach a child to simply use words to request the item back. So when the little sister takes the toy away from the brother, we could teach him to say, my turn, and have the toy back. And we can work on this communication all day by putting him into situations where we take the item away from him and prompt him to say, my turn, where he gets it back. So that becomes a strengthened communication tool for him. On the other hand, it seems like when he's told no, he has a difficult time tolerating this disappointment. And tolerating disappointment is also a skill that we can work to teach in small doses and gradually build up to where it is more functional for him in daily life. So that's one part of being effective at addressing problem behavior, is that we need to understand why the child is engaging in the behavior so we can give them a better way to accomplish that same goal using an alternative means, whether that's through communication or teaching them a skill that's going to allow them to resist engaging in the hitting behavior. The other thing that we need to understand is that we are still providing a consequence every single time that the child hits. Every behavior has a consequence, whether we've programmed it or just the environment is delivering its own consequence. Every behavior has a consequence. And consequences, by their nature, either increase or strengthen behavior, or they decrease or weaken behavior, or they're a neutral consequence which has no impact on behavior at all. So we need to decide, is the consequence we're delivering strengthening that behavior? Is it staying the same in how often it's happening? Because that would tell us our consequence is either neutral, meaning it has no effect on behavior, or it's strengthening in the fact that our child continues to engage in this behavior because we're maintaining it somehow with our consequence. If the goal is to decrease the number of times that a child engages in behavior, and it's happening about the same amount of times every day, that means that our consequence is ineffective. You can't just rely on consequences. This is called reactive strategy. And this means we do nothing to help support teaching new skills, but we just wait for the behavior to happen and we respond or react to the behavior in some way. And oftentimes, parents rely on things like punishment because that's a traditional disciplinary method that they grew up with and they don't know any better. So let's just say we understand that a child is hitting because when they hit, they get that thing that they want to have. Let's say that when he hits his sister, the sister does give him the toy back. Or let's say when he's told no, he can't have a cookie and he hits, you end up giving him the cookie because you would feel bad. This pattern would show us that the behavior of hitting is continuing to happen because it's getting his wants met. He wants the toy and he wants the cookie, and he's effectively communicating to you that desire through the hitting because it's paying off and getting what he wants. In order to teach communication skills, in order to teach new skills that are hard, we have to make sure that the problem behavior isn't still working to communicate. If I'm going to learn a foreign language, that's really difficult for me, but I can still revert back to using English and everybody will understand me, I'm not probably going to learn the new language. Why would I work on learning something new and difficult when something that's way easier is still working to get my needs and wants met? It is when I immerse myself into a foreign country where nobody speaks English that I am forced to learn the new language in order to get my needs and wants met. And so we essentially need to stop allowing the old language to work for our kids. Oftentimes, they're communicating with us through their behavior. If we signal to them that that communication is no longer effective, then we open the door to being able to teach a new form of communication. And so what this looks like often is not giving them what they want when they engage in that problem behavior. So on one hand, I'm working to teach new skills and I teach new communication strategies. And on the other hand, when that problem behavior occurs, I'm making sure that I don't just give in and give the cookie because I feel bad. I know that I'm working on effective consequences in order to give him better skills that are going to be useful and functional in his everyday life. If we want our kids to be successful, they can't walk around hitting in order to try to communicate what they want. So the skills that I need to acquire as a parent in order to determine whether or not I have effective consequences is that, one, I need to figure out what my child is trying to communicate or accomplish through their behavior so that I can then teach them a better way to communicate and accomplish that same thing, while also rendering their old problematic behavior useless in achieving their desired outcomes. When that can happen, you will see that your consequences are effective because the behavior is going to start to decrease over time. Again, we are not looking to interrupt the instance of the behavior. We are hoping to see that it happened 4 times per day tomorrow. And then it happened 3 times per day. And then 2 times per day. And then all of a sudden, You look around and you realize you haven't seen him hitting for a few days. Do you have questions about how to be effective managing your child's problematic behavior? Drop them in the comments below. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Autism Jumpstart's dive into all things autism and behavior, and subscribe so that you can see when the next video comes out.